Hello. I think I'm live now, right? All right. Let's get my windows in order here. Cool. I think the clock is wrong on this. So yeah, we're going to hang out for a minute and just make sure everybody kind of gets in here. Cool. The clock is wrong on this. So yeah, we're going to hang out for a minute and just make sure everybody kind of gets in here. Cool. The clock is wrong on this. So yeah, we're going to hang out for a minute. Just make sure everybody kind of gets in here. There we go. I was hearing myself. This is my first time doing this, so it's fun. Yes, in New York City time, we have our own time. Everything sounding good? Everything all right? Well, thanks everybody for joining me. I'm looking forward to this. We're going to talk about mixing major and minor pentatonic scales, a question I get asked a lot about. And we have Brad Wenkos, Mr. TrueFire himself, moderating. So any questions you have. So if you look right over here, there's some materials you can download. One of the tracks I'm going to play along with, and just some PDFs on your major pentatonic scales, or actually the minor pentatonic scales. So first thing, you know, is just knowing those pentatonic scales. So the question I get asked a lot is the changes of a blues. So the first thing I would say to everyone, come comfortable with a minor pentatonic scale. That's going to be the, you know, you got to have that down first. If you don't have that, you're going to be in, it's going to be really hard to do. So let's just not worry about mixing anything just yet. So let me just call up a track here. I'm just going to jam around on this track. This is one of the ones I sent. It's a Watch Out, it's called, and it's sort of a takeoff on, I don't even take it. It's basically Peter Green. There's a great Fleetwood Mac tune. I don't know if the mix is okay. Let's go play minor. Okay, so that's kind of your basic minor pentatonic sound, right? So we're probably pretty familiar with that. So first thing, I just want to talk about a few of those little licks in there right now. Questions afterwards, it's kind of hard. There's a little bit of a lag when I get your questions. So let me just talk about a few things. So the first thing I'm thinking is minor blues, minor pentatonic scale. So one of the key licks I just want to spend some time on, and we can move this lick around a bit, is what we call like the Albert King lick, which is, here's Stevie Ray Vaughan do that a lot. That sound. That sound there, the A minor pentatonic. So we just play that over the track. So whatever chord I'm on, it works great. We start from the top, so we hear the changes. All right, so I would spend a lot of time, distorting a little bit here, on that lick. Just beat it to death on purpose. Now, when you learn a lick like that, something you want to think about is it's very cliche. Sort of negative way, there's lots of cliches in music, obviously, that we want to learn and make sure we know. But one of the things we want to think about is we don't want to do too many cliches, because then you end up being very lick player. Why? You know, it sounds like a lick player. None of us really want to do that. But we got to go in to get out, if you know what I mean, right? We need to play some of those licks first. My vocals distorting a little bit here. Hold on, let me just turn that. There we go. Okay, so just this lick right off the top. So just bend in this D up a whole step. And I'm bringing that note down. When we talk about that bend, I'm going to get to the top. I'm stopping it right at the top. And I got the cool little out of phase Peter Green, Albert King sound going on. The out of phase pickups. So last note. Here's one of the first things I want to dig into. And if you guys have my courses, you hear me talk about tweaking the third a lot. And what I'm doing here is by tweaking the third, I'm paying attention to what my notes are. I'm going to get my chat window up. Sorry, lots of windows here. Okay, so third is the note that we want to start to address first. I'm going to spend some time on it. If we have our first chord in the blues, let's say A7, I'm playing an A blues, first chord's A7. So if we look at an A minor pentatonic scale, is A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C. But A7, which is our first chord in the blues, is spelled A, C sharp, E, G, A, C sharp, E, G, A, C sharp. Right, so we got the sound of the dominant 7 chord. And then a lot of times, well, the pentatonic scale is a minor scale, so it has a C in it. It's a pretty poor note to sit on your 1 chord. So the first thing we can do, and we want to do this every time we have a flatted third or a C in an A blues, is we want to bend it just a little bit. I call it tweaking the third. And what I want to do is keep that note continuously moving next pitch. So just in case I'm going to resolve down to my root. Just like that. See, if I stop the note, it's out of tune, right? We don't want to do that. I want to keep resolve it. So, right, so that's the first thing we want to think about. Same note down here. On that track. Sit on it. All right, bud. Right, so all over the place. That's flat there. Okay, so all I was doing was an A minor pentatonic scale, and I tweaked my flat third. So a great exercise is just to find those C's everywhere. And if you look through TrueFire's YouTube page here, you'll see my blues series, Tighten Up Your Blues. And I do a whole little lesson on this. So if you look around, you'll find this exact thing I'm talking about right now. So that's the first thing first. Get that together, because you really, really, really want to have that down. Mixing major and minor Doesn't mean anything yet until you can kind of do that. I think people want to run before they can walk, you know, all those cliches. And it's totally true because I was the same exact way and still am to a lot of it. Okay, so that's the first thing. We have those flat thirds. We're going to tweak those. And fortunately, our 4 chord in the A blues is going to be D7, which is spelled D, F sharp, A, and C. So that C is actually a good note. So we don't have to tweak it, but it still sounds good if we do. We don't want to tweak it too much, just a little bit. It's just a nice blues inflection. Fan, especially the Cream era and John Mayall's Blues Breakers, all really good stuff. And in his autobiography, he talks about, not much about guitar, actually. He talks more about his personal life. But there's one paragraph where he talks about what I'm talking about right now, tweaking the third and getting that right note to sound right. And I thought it was kind of fun that he spent so much time thinking about this. So it kind of, what I'm doing, thinking about it, you know? Okay, so the first thing now, how do we start mixing a bit? There's a bunch of ways we can walk into it. Let me just talk about adding one note. C, such a great note on our 1 chord, which would be A7. So we can tweak it, but how about we play it? So I'm going to add a note into my minor pentatonic scale. Okay, so what I'm just going to do is play A, C, C sharp now. E, the G, and back to the A again. So once again, keep going through. G, C, C sharp, D, E, G, A. So it's just, here's the move. That's the move. I'm going to play flat 3 to 3. So C to C sharp is my root. Want me to go up, right? Or anywhere I want to go with it, right? Any note in the scale, but it sounds great going to the root, down. So let's hear that over the track. It's going to work on the 1 chord. So check it out. I'm on A, right off the top. 4 chord now back. 4 chord, right? Be really simple. Now I'm going to just be really obvious about it, right? Watch. So. Oops, messed up. So you see what I did? I really went out of my way to, every time I had that A chord, just to find it everywhere I can on the fingerboard and make sure. That's just loud. My friend Bill always wants me to buy this guitar from me, so and not in your life. All right, so I'm just, every time I had my 1 chord, which is the A chord, I'm going to make sure I do that. So this is exercise stuff, like not necessarily in playing, right? Introduction to outlining that chord, because what am I doing? If I look at the notes, A7 is spelled A, C sharp, E, G, A, C sharp, E, G, C, right? Sorry, let's play it one more time. A, C sharp, E, G, A, C sharp, E, G, A. Sure I hit that C sharp when I'm on that 1 chord. Pretty clear to everybody what's going on? So if I go to my 4 chord, which is D7, D, F sharp, A, and C, on the 4 chord, I do not want to hit that C sharp. That's going to sound really bad. On my 4 chord, D7, right? So you see what I mean? That's not a good pitch, but if I do, hear those changes? So A7. You hear the change? Let me play that. It's going to do those 2 notes. C sharp, A, C, A. Now to play the C. time up top. Watch. Straight. Is this making sense, right? So just on my one chord, third, which is a C sharp, I'm playing the C natural, which is the D chord. And it's also part of our A minor pentatonic scale. So there's a few things that we can, so that's the first thing I would say. Like, you know, don't move on from that. Do not pass going, because you can do it everywhere on a fingerboard, and it really, that's the point, feeling fluid with it and hearing those changes. Good. All right. So the question, and I forget who asked some of these questions, so I'm going to generally, the questions that people book page was, I think Warren Haynes talks about using a major pentatonic scale on the one chord, and on the 4 and 5 using minor. Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about that. So A major pentatonic, excuse me, is spelled A, B, C sharp, E, F sharp. A, B, C sharp, E, F sharp, A. So what it has the notes of A, C sharp, E, but it doesn't have the flat 7. It has the 6. But that sounds cool too, though, right? So, all right, so let's talk about A major pentatonic on the one chord and A minor pentatonic on, all right, so I'm going to be really obvious about it. I'm going to go to what we know is the pentatonic scale, right? A major here, A minor here. Very similar to what you hear Clapton kind of do on Crossroads. So it's in track. A major pentatonic. Now A minor. Right? Minor. Back to major. Minor. Minor. Okay, so too much about the inner workings of the chords, we can start getting into making the changes using major pentatonic on your one chord, tonic on your 4 and your 5. So that's a really kind of quick sort of, it helped me for ages. You know, you think about Clapton and Crossroads and, you know, paraphrasing. That kind of sound. So right there. Four chord kind of going to the minor pentatonic. So you're cutting the changes just by thinking those two scales. So what that is doing is still you're kind of playing over the chord. So there's two lingo buzzwords that the jazz musicians or musicians use. That's on the chords and over the chords. So on the chords means I'm going to address what are the notes in the chord. And I just so happen to have a new course coming out called Chord Tone Soloing, which addresses this, but in a blues and in bluesy rock stuff. So thinking about that little pitch I gave you, Think about what chord you want to solo on, as opposed to just playing a scale over it and ending on a root each time, or just thinking playing over the scale, over the changes, as opposed to playing on them. So we started, if I backtrack once again, when we thought about the C sharp change to the C, we were playing on the changes because I nailed. Right? So, yeah, let's get that in a second. So I really just nailed those two changes, right? I played from my C sharp to my C, back to the C sharp. All right, so that just by hitting those two notes, I covered the chord changes. As opposed to when I'm thinking pentatonic, you know, I'm thinking scales. I am playing on the chord changes, but I'm not really nailing it. I'm just thinking these overall sounds and positions that I can go through. There's nothing wrong with that, but you do want to dig a little deeper, and that's where stuff gets cooler. Let's talk about that 5 chord. So we've talked about the 1 and the 4, pretty generally speaking. So if I look at the 1, right, going here to my 4, here's just a great little spot right here. So I've got my 1, my 4 chord, my 1. My 5, watch. All 3 chords by playing C sharp, C, C sharp, D for my 5 chord. Back to the 1. So let me do that. I'll put notes around it. Volume. Now in music, right? Okay, so that's does that sound good, right? You understand what I did there? So I just hit the 4 and the 1, the 4 and the 5, just by thinking those 3 notes. Right, so just the inner working. So that's one spot on the fingerboard. So if you look at different positions on the neck where you can find that, that is key. Right? Everywhere. Find them, because germ, the one small idea, and then start to build on it. Because if you try to, if you try to do all the stuff at once, I just think it never works out for me. I'll speak for myself. The only thing that really works is to take one idea and just explore every angle of it I possibly can. If I just focus in on getting the third of my A chord, A7 chord, to my flat 7 of my D chord, to my third, and if I go up and I get my flat 7 of my E7 chord. Now, I don't know if you know that stuff or not necessarily, right? If you don't know flat thirds and flat 7s, don't worry about that just yet. If you just look at your chord fingering, you want to know those notes. You have to know those notes. There's no excuse for not knowing them. If you've been playing for a while, really got to put in time and do it. But if you look at it this way, right, going here, and I'm just looking at the notes. They're just right in the chord. This C sharp's right there. Going to D7, D9, back up, and into my E. So just right in the chord. So if I look at this picture of the chord, let's talk about that. So I want to go up here. Wow, what I just did there. First of all, is all this making sense? Everybody? Now, somebody just Tor71 said tritone mojo. Yes, so we're talking about tritones, essentially, of the chord. Now, the reason why I haven't gone into that terminology just yet, if you're new to it, really confusing. I got to think about chord tones, and I got to learn this, and I got to learn that. You do ultimately, but you want to kind of make it simple on yourself. Let's first right off the bat look at our 3 chord groups. A7. Let's go to D7. Right. Let's go to an E7. And for right now, let's skip E7. We're going to play with E7. In other words, we're not going to outline the full E7 chord yet. Here's D7. 5. What I just did right here on this D7 chord, I just did that. Here's a great lick. I'm just going straight down D7, but I'm going to fret them individually because it sounds cooler than going. I'm going to go. For us nerds, I'm doing all ups. Last note's down. Still tweaking that third. Right? Okay, so my 5 chord I keep doing. So you hear those chords just by thinking the shape that's right there. Once again, you guys are talking about tritones and things, and looking over here. Yes, I'm just trying to make it a little easier because I think much information at times is I know on guitar is completely overwhelming. So if you just start seeing some shapes, and then then go back and think about how the notes function within the chord. I'm in no way saying you don't need to know that. I'm saying the exact opposite. You absolutely need to know that, but that shouldn't stop you from getting the sounds and having fun first, right? They have a little delay. Is that an arpeggio? It was a question I was just asked. Yes. Yeah, you're playing an arpeggio. So, I mean, like I said, if you just look at shapes sometimes. You're hearing those chord changes as they whip through. All right, so let's talk about this lick right here. That lick is actually really kind of fun. I find that some of these licks work great on all the chords, just because it sounds cool and bluesy. If we're tweaking our third, where it's always going to sound pretty cool. The other note we want to think about tweaking a lot is our flat 7. Right? So that G up to the root, and it gives a nice kind of, you're going somewhere. Now a trick, once again, on the bends, like I said earlier, if you guys just tuning in, never stop your bend unless you want to go, like that kind of thing. But if you want to bend to another note, don't ever stop the bend until you fret the other note. If I stop a tweaked flat 7, it just sounds out of tune. Same with the flat third. Right? So there's all sorts of ways to practice that kind of flat third, tweak and bend. So back to my original point. This lick, love this lick. D7 chord. Right, so. you see I kind of put that lick in a bunch of times. So you see some saying, no, this is not an arpeggio, blah, blah. Is it an arpeggio? Is it an arpeggio? I mean, that you get into very sort of like nomenclature or, you know, pedagogical, that's the word. That's technically an arpeggio, but if I go, I see it, I'm arpeggiating the chord. Okay, so that lick, it's a great lick. You know, I hear, I learned it from Angus Young, actually. And Peter Green, song called If You Be My Baby. That lick right there. So it's a great lick. It's outlining my 4 chord. All right, so once again, go back and think again. So we have adding in C sharp. We're on a 1 chord, so we're going to add a natural third on our 1 chord. Okay, we're going to play that flat third on the 4 chord, which happens to turn out to be the flat 7 of the 4 chord. In other words, a chord tone. Once again, if we look at the chord shape, we start to see the notes inside. All right, that was the first thing we did. Second thing we did was mixing major and minor pentatonic. Meaning major pentatonic on the 1, minor pentatonic on the 4. All right, so now, if any of you guys are really kind of confused on this stuff, there's lots of great stuff on TrueFire that runs over it, and I know I cover it in my lead guitar survival guide, and I know in my Brooklyn Blues and also Tighten Up Your Blues stuff I did for TrueFire right here, I talk about these things too. So if you look through, you can find them. Okay, so now just what's fun is now we've not put them on top of each other yet, right? There's all sorts of things we can do. So I can mix the 2 scales, and we come up with what is called a hybrid scale, or we call it a composite blues scale. So we take a blues scale, and we mix in a major pentatonic scale with it. So we get this kind of crazy. Which is just nuts, right? Because how are you gonna, how can you solo with that? And this is where thinking about scales, it really differs from thinking about chord tones. So if I'm thinking about the notes of my chord, I'm thinking the right note at the right time. If I think about a scale like that, it gets to be very, you know, I've got too many notes, what am I gonna do? So what I'm gonna look for, and now I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper to some of this stuff, is each dominant 7th chord has 2 really important notes in it, and it's the 3rd and the flat 7. So I know this might be, hopefully we'll not lose all you guys, but at this point, I got some questions coming here, and Brad is helping out. So what I want to think about in those cases is not so much scales, because there's all sorts of things like I can look at, Jeff, are you thinking in the minor and then the major patterns you're creating a joined measure pattern? Okay, yes. Okay, so Brad was asking. Yeah, okay. The first thing is we're kind of getting that right now. If you think about a major pentatonic scale, right? And a minor pentatonic scale, A minor blues, I could put those 2 right on top of each other, and I get what I call the composite blues scale. So that's a lot to think about. But if I think about all this on top of each other, and I think about the notes we discussed before, I can see the D7 shape in there, I can see the A7 shape, and I can see the E7, which isn't really covered in the composite blues scale. Let me talk about that for 1 second. I know I'm all over the place on some things. If you want to talk about guys like Clapton, Peter Green, the guys I really love, those guys weren't really big on outlining the 5 chord as its own entity. They did sometimes. So I'm going to say, yeah, they did. Sometimes, but not all the time. The majority of the time, they would do something like, right, and just hit the root on that turnaround. So like, right, so that kind of right on the top, right in the 5 chord. So right at the end of the turnaround. I gotta stop looking at the comments because I'm getting distracted. All right, so what I'm going to do is use what I consider and hit the notes that we discussed earlier. So I'm looking at, I've got the scale that's basically a minor and a major blues scale mixed together, but I want to end on the notes that we discussed earlier. Okay, let's try that. Real simple. Now watch. I'll slow down a little bit, right? So. Okay, so, you know, I'm kind of thinking major pentatonic and minor pentatonic. And, you know, I've been doing this for a really, really long time. So here are my keys to think about doing this. Is you got to listen to the people who do it. That is essential. And you've got to learn some of those people's solos. For me, Eric Clapton, and especially the Blues Breakers and Cream era, Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac, Blues Breakers, Mick Taylor, Blues Breakers, Rolling Stones, Jimmy Page, of course. Yeah, I love Jeff Beck, one of my absolute heroes, but he's a whole other animal in these sort of things. We're talking about these kind of classic blues things. You know, modern players, you know, like Robin Ford, of course, does this all the time. Bonamassa, Matt Schofield, all the great players, blues players. This is just standard stuff. If you play straight minor blues to everything, you're going to sound, and I don't mean this in any disparaging way in any way, very Texas sounding, like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Albert King, which is awesome. This is a bit of a different sound. They don't necessarily mix the major and minor pentatonic scales as much as someone like B.B. King would. So I see Peter Green squarely out of the B.B. King school. And Mike Bloomfield, of course. Yes, Mike Bloomfield. And now, so you have to listen to the right people, and you have to learn their solos. You really do. And at TrueFire, you know, I've got plenty of courses on it. There's plenty of great courses out there, lick courses, things like that, to really get into those things. And I've got a new course coming out in a few weeks, 30 sweet pentatonic blues licks you need to know, which is a lot of licks like this, mixing major and minor pentatonic scales. Now, you know, when people are typing in guitar player names, yeah, any good guitar player, I think, you know, is going to mix major and minor pentatonic. Angus Young, I love Angus Young, absolutely love Angus Young. Mixes major and minor pentatonic all the time. So, so thinking about that, it's you want to learn those licks. Pick up a B.B. King's greatest hits and just start figuring the stuff out. Other guys who kind of use the major pentatonic sort of sound is like the Allman Brothers, of course. They have a more specific sort of like Southern rock vibe to it. But when they play in the blues, if you listen to Stormy Monday off of the Fillmore East, you know, it's all major pentatonic sort of stuff. Yeah. You know, that whole, like, you know, without the string noise. Right now, really cool. Peter Green, BB's box, you know. learning some of those key licks and those key solos is really what it comes down to. And thinking about, as you go through it, giving them names. And if you do what I recommended at the beginning, if you just see the chord shape, if you're playing out of this, what we call BB's box up here. Blues. Here's your A7 chord. D7. Now my E7 chord. It's live. All right, so I hope this helped. So I'm just going to reiterate one more time. One note at a time. Add in a natural third on the 1 chord. Play the flat 7 or the flat third of the scale on the 4 chord. And just get that down. Find it in a few different spots in the neck. You really, one of the things, well, I'm glad I thought about this. One of the things that I think people, one of the problems that they have is that they don't hear the chord changes. You need to hear the chord changes as they go by. So you got to be really interactive with what you're playing along with. Have it really internalize what the change is going to be as you're, and when you play one scale over the whole thing, you don't necessarily need to, you don't need to think about it. You just play the scale and you hope and you end on roots a lot and it'll be fine. But to get to really play on the chord changes, you have to know what the chord changes are and when they come. Okay. Brad, okay. I posted a bunch of questions from different folks earlier in the thread. I'm going to scroll up and get some now. Okay, so I hope I can talk about this stuff forever, but all right. So I think I've kind of covered the main thing. I'm going to scroll up in the course here and see what I got here. Okay. Greetings from St. Pete. Hi, Ali. Mixing major, minor blues selected. This is from All Amped Up. Okay, yep. I think I talked about when I can outline those chords. All right, looking through here. It's live, you can tell. Hold on. All right, now we're getting started. Do you really mix major and minor, or do you add the minor third? Okay, once again, do I mix major and minor? We talked about that a little bit. Both. I will mix major and minor on top of each other, but to start off, I'll just mix in the natural third of the 1 chord to outline the 1 chord. That's the easiest way to start doing it. Okay. Tweaking the 7th, yep, all the time. Internet troll. Okay. Is there a generic formula that I can use, say, A minor pentatonic with X major pentatonic across all blues progressions? Yeah, you know, you can use, that's what I was saying in the beginning, you can use a minor pentatonic scale over the whole thing and it'll sound really cool. But you end up, I think, I like the expression, leaving money on the table when you do that. You just, there are lots of great players who do that. As a listener, I gravitate towards the guys who go a little bit deeper and get totally deep in playing the jazz guys and all that stuff. But I like it a little deeper sounding, and that's what I'm talking about with Peter Green. And the first thing is just adding in a natural third or playing the major pentatonic on the 1 and then playing the minor on the 4 and the 5. Okay. And yeah, we're talking about, somebody said about getting closer by thinking chord tones. I got to tell you, and this is what that new course is really about, is that changed everything for me. When I started thinking about the shapes of the chords and knowing the notes in the chord tones and everything like that, and the chords, that changed everything. I don't really think scales like I used to. I'll practice scales to keep my technique together, but when I'm soloing, it's really about chord tones, notes surrounding them. So if I, you know, I can add all those kind of chromatic notes, which takes work, but steering is a step. So kind of dancing around the notes. And once again, the easiest way to start to do that, if you don't know all the notes in the fingerboard yet, if you don't know all your arpeggios yet, which you need to, and you want to, and spend countless hours working on that, is seeing the shape. to see that shape, play around that, and you're going to be well on your way. And all those notes are contained in either the major or the minor pentatonic scale. So that's pretty cool. Okay, someone asked, okay, you tweak the third on the 4 chord, but not, you tweak the third on the 1 chord, but not on the 4. What about in the 5? Okay, just to be clear, this is Añejo 33.3. I tweak the third on all of them. I just got to be careful on the 4 chord. I don't tweak it too much. When I say tweak the third, I'm talking that hair, right? I'll even do it in the minor chord. Right? So yeah, tweaking the flat third on everything. A lot of guys do. I can bend to the flat, to the natural third. Right? That's a cool sound. All right. Cletus, I'm glad this is helping out. Hold on. Okay, okay. Musicians in Warren Haynes to play the minor chord. Yeah, so playing the minor pentatonic scale, the 4 and the 5 chord, and the major pentatonic scale on the 1 chord. Now, that's what's going to sound a lot like, as we talked about before. That's a great way to start digging into it. Okay, so next one. When playing a 12-bar blues, how does one interject an appealing blues riff, like When and Where, and given that the chords are going by generally set order without a break? Thanks. Okay, that was by Stephen Boyer. What I would say there, that's where learning other people's solos and a lot of practice. Like listen to recording yourself. Like let's say if you learn a fairly easy solo that have all my students learn, Strange Brew from Cream, that really great solid solo. And then you could start to think about, well, how is he phrasing? Where are those breaks going? And how can I take those same exact licks and plug them in elsewhere? So that's a really important thing to think about. How do you know when to interject an appealing blues riff? I know it sounds like a really annoying answer, but it's really, that is true. The more you practice this stuff, the more you learn other people's stuff, the larger your vocabulary becomes. And not just your vocabulary in terms of licks, but your vocabulary on the instrument. How to help with your phrasing, where you're going to place those licks, where, and sometimes licks don't become licks anymore. They just become sounds and areas on the fingerboard that you're familiar with. So, okay, you talk about using the flat 7 to lead from the 4 and to the 5 back to the 1. Sure. Okay, so well, the flat 7 on the A is the G note. When I go to my 4 chord, it goes back down to the F sharp, so it's right off the D7 chord. Then G sharp, F sharp, to the G again. That's part of that tritone idea. And if you look at the inner working of your chord, you'll see those inside of there. That's another sort of, I don't want to say can of worms. That's a whole other thing I don't have the time to get into here. But take a look at the shapes of the chords. Write them out on a piece of paper and see how these things move and stay like down a half step. That third becomes the 7th, the flat 7th of the other chord. So if you write the stuff down on paper, know it on your fingerboard, that's okay, you'll get there. But if you write it out on paper, a lot of things become really obvious. So I would recommend that for sure. Okay. Okay, this is a great question. David Skinner, when soloing, do you consciously think about the scales that you're going to use in a given situation, or is that for the practice session? On a gig, no, look, I can say this with a fair amount of experience. I've been playing a really long time, so I'm pretty fluent on the instrument. That doesn't mean I don't practice stuff all the time. And I'm not necessarily thinking scales. And I think about that when I'm practicing, if I want to put in a new idea. Or for instance, if I'm just getting to a blues and I'm not used to using what we call the, I'll just work on that and consciously think about those notes and find a few ideas and work those ideas. But when I'm playing, I try not to think scales. This is where I really think chord tones. And the cool thing about the chord tones is true modesty. I can play over just about anything because I know the names and notes in each chord and on the neck. Can I play well over everything? No, right? I mean, you know, I can intellectually, I'm a really good jazz guitar player because I understand a lot of the vocabulary. I studied it. I know what the notes are. So when I say good, I mean, I can make all the chord changes. But, you know, can I play like Frank Vignola? No way. That's a lifetime of work and vocabulary. I went this way, they went that way. So, but what I'm getting at is if I have to do a jazzy tune, which I avoid at all costs, I can make it through because I can are in the chords. So that case, I'm always thinking chord tones, and I feel pretty confident that I'm not going to sound terrible. I may not sound great, and but I know I'm not going to probably hit any bad notes. And if I do, it was just a mistake as opposed to I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. That's another point. There's mistakes, and then there's just not knowing what you're supposed to be doing. So mistakes happen all the time. Not knowing what you're doing, you need to practice that more, right? Okay. Okay, for the beginner, as you go back to pack these materials, I think I pretty much just covered that. One idea at a time, nice and small. As a beginner, minor pentatonic. Don't think about anything else. Minor pentatonic is going to give you that classic sort of Texas Stevie Ray Vaughan, Albert King sound, which is awesome and an absolute necessity. To start mixing them is going to require some work, but get that stuff down first. Like I said, a lot of people ask me to, I want to learn on mixing pentatonic scale. If we start jamming on a blues, and they don't have a lot of stuff together. So that's first and foremost. And I'm a huge fan of guys like Little Walter and all the old blues. Most of that's just minor pentatonic, and it's fantastic. And I don't mean that in any kind of, no, it's just minor. It's not just minor pentatonic. The way those guys play that stuff is amazing. So build up the vocabulary. Can we use the B scale over the 5 chord rather than moving to the Phrygian mode? I do not think for 1/2 a second about a Phrygian mode on a blues. Ever in a million years. Ever. Because I know what you're getting at. I don't want to go down that road, so I'm going to answer that question directly. There's no Phrygian sound in a blues anywhere, right? Because Phrygian, what does that have to do with, you know? So if you want to try to think modally over a blues, each of those chords has its own mixolydian scale. But that's like going here to go there to go there. The Phrygian idea. Like, excuse me, I'm going to like think about this, but I'm going to go make this turn over there to see, think Phrygian to get the sound I want. Just go exactly where you want. On top, modally would be a mixolydian scale. A chord, D mixolydian on your D chord, E mixolydian on your E chord. And they all are one note different. So that's another thing I can't get into, but don't try to think about other scale names over something that you want to do when you can go directly to it. Are you thinking, this is by Michael Norwood, are you thinking in minor than major patterns help create? Yes, yeah. You know, at first, yes, I'm thinking about major and minor pentatonic scales to create that mega pattern. I think I answered that earlier, but yes, I'm thinking about putting those two together. Rhythmic approaches. Can you talk about something in your rhythmic approaches? Yeah, okay, sure. To me, that comes down to listening to other people. You want to practice rhythm. This is like another live feed we could talk about rhythm guitar, which I think would be fantastic to do. And I'll just sometimes try to emulate other guitar players. There's no really, you don't have to worry about sounding like them. You got to work your butt off to sound like somebody else. And then most of the time it doesn't work out. And why would you? Because the best version of Yngwie Malmsteen is called Yngwie Malmsteen. I love Yngwie, so I don't want to hear any negative things about Yngwie. So the rhythmic approach, I'll just find a guy who's kind of stuff that I like, and I'll kind of try to steal some of it and then make it my own. But one thing I really would recommend is always think music. Always think music, and always think melodies. I'm trying to think melody as much as I possibly can. And that comes from, I don't know, from being a big David Gilmour and Jeff Beck fan on the guitar. Because one thing I realized when I was at Berkeley and a lot of my friends were super shreddy, I've got some chops, but I don't have like those super shred chops. Because I started realizing I don't really hear music that way. I don't think I have the physical natural ability to shred like crazy. I don't have the interest, because when I heard guys like Jeff Beck or all the guys I've mentioned earlier, those guys affected me more, and it was more melodically based. Okay. How to use drum machines, metronome, tie and hitting sweet notes and chords. Wow. Okay. That's a big question. How to use drums, metronome, etc. This could tie into hitting sweet notes on chord tones and changes. Well, I'll just try to put these two things together. This next question about phrasing. I always try to play with some sort of framework behind me. I have a solo blues course. I practice playing solo blues all the time. I love that. That's important to do. But I'm also just, if I'm going to play over a blues, I'll have a metronome going, keeping my time for me, or a drum track, just to make sure, because then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to learn how to play off of the rhythm. And it also builds my internal sense of rhythm as well, which is super important. Okay. How do you phrasing? How do you improve your phrasing? Listen to other people. Steal as much as you humanly can. And everybody tells you this. Sometimes people say, oh, he just told me to steal other people's licks. Everybody does it. That's what everybody's done since the beginning of time. You hear Miles Davis talk about stealing Dexter Gordon licks and Charlie Christian licks. And then, Robert Plant, says he listened to Howlin' Wolf, and Jeff Beck said he listened to Cliff Gallup and Muddy Waters and Albert King and B.B. King. And you know what I mean? So everybody's stealing from everybody else. And it's just about making it your own. So the phrasing comes from learning from other people. Hey, Kristen, how are you? From Houston, how you doing? Which your course says is great backing track. It is available for download on the link here from TrueFire. If you go to the TrueFire page 2, you can download this stuff. These 2 tracks. I didn't get to the other track, but don't worry about it. Compliments. Okay. Chris Bass, what's a good, easiest solo for artists to first transcribe getting into this? Strange Brew by Cream, Eric Clapton. That's a great... Okay, what's inside? That solo, and I believe he stole that solo from Albert King. He hated, apparently, the story I've heard, Eric Clapton did not like that song, so he decided to steal an Albert King solo, and I believe it is the solo, I could be wrong, from Crosscut Saw. So that's a great one. All those licks are great. It goes anywhere. E. All right, so you just take that lick and start plugging it in elsewhere. Nikki O'Neill, hey Nikki, how are you? Mixing major mix. I mix major and pentatonic scale with chord tones from major shapes. Yes, you're right. Yeah, it is much easier to think about chord tones than it is to think about scales. I totally agree. Because after a while, the scales don't matter. Like I play that kind of chromatic lick. The more jazzy it's going to sound, but it's all about chord tones. Any melody you listen to, I would say almost guaranteed any melody is just made up of chord tones. So just my rake technique. Sure. Let's say I'm going to shoot for C. I'm going to mute with both my left and right hand. What am I doing? I got to think about. Okay, this is all from this right hand. I'm gonna, with the heel of my hand, rest on the lower strings, and I get that note. I'm gonna mute on the top here, so I don't get other notes ringing out. And where did I get that? Good question. from Gilmore, he does it all the time. So I actually learned that from being a real Gilmore nut. Okay. Hold on. Yep, Charlie Christian went with shapes. Yeah, a lot of guys go with shapes. I know Larry Carlton talks about thinking about triads and shapes and things like that. Right, because any it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Like if some people, like if you think it's simplistic to think shapes, the guitar is a very picture-oriented instrument. I think any player who says at some point they're not thinking about shapes is not being entirely truthful. How's that? Telling falsehoods. Okay, what do you have here? Yes, know your triads, absolutely. Jeff, do I know Howard Roberts or Keith Wyatt? I know of them. Certainly heard them both play. They're both great, but I've not met either of them personally. Is Howard Roberts still with us? I don't remember. I know Keith Wyatt is. Okay. Let me go through here. Okay, can you, a tone question. Sure, why not? Can you tell us how to set your tone when playing the blues? Well, that's always up to you. Personalized taste thing. Depends what you're playing, or Strats or Les Paul. If you notice, I don't have a ton of gain on. I like it a little cleaner. Well, depending on what I'm playing. If I'm playing hard rock, which I grew up playing metal, I love it. But I want a tone that if I roll back my volume, it cleans up. So I have some pedals on the floor that, I think I stepped on once or twice, just for like a slight boost, especially when I was in the middle. Real kind of Peter Green sound that I love. But you lose some volume with that, so sometimes I'll hit the boost and hit it up a little bit. But most of it's just from my volume knob. I would set the neck pickup, my amp to the neck pickup, so it gets a nice kind of not too hooty a sound, like, the tone knob back. So what I'll just do is I'll match out the bridge pickup and maybe roll back the treble a bit. So in all the Gibsons, I use 50s wiring. Nerd Central. There's not too much. Here's the thing: too much overdrive is just you're gonna get buried. You're gonna get your tone gets lost. So the cleaner the guitar sound within reason, the more it's gonna cut. I don't like a really clean guitar sound, like super, super clean. It just doesn't suit my style of playing. I always like a little bit of overdrive, so I can actually dial the volume knob back on the amp, on my guitar, and it cleans up to a clean sound, right? So as I did here, So is it totally clean? Nope. But I don't want it to be totally clean because the overdrive gives it a bit of a nice attack on the notes. All right. Can we mix pentatonic scales with natural minor while doing solos? No. It's not going to sound good. So, the blues, a natural minor scale just doesn't really sound very good. So you're playing A minor has an F natural in it. It's kind of, if you make it an F sharp, you start playing notes that are in the other scale. But so no, as just a kind of a quick answer to your question, no. The sound comes and goes. There's not much I can do about that. What's the best way to hear chord changes while practicing? That's a great question. First thing I would do is, as you're going anywhere, whether you have your iPhone or whatever way you listen to music, just as you're listening to blues, just follow along with the changes. 1 chord, 4 chord, one chord, 5. Like really just internalize it separately from here. Like, you know. Right? And 4. Right? Just have that turn. Here's my 5. Wait for it. Right? Just know that when that's going by, that's the first thing first. If you don't have it internalized, you are not going to be able to play over it. So that's first. Yeah, and then start doing it while you're practicing. Make conscious efforts, even if you have to follow a chart or play super simple. That's the way to do it. Let's see what else we got. Your opinion of East West by Mike Bloomfield. I love Mike Bloomfield. You know, and it's kind of, I got to tell you, I was introduced to Mike Bloomfield by really by Robin Ford, and I never really heard the good stuff until he turned me on to some of the right stuff to listen to, and yeah, and he and I are doing a workshop together. His Traveling Guitar Dojo at the end of August. If you want to check that out, Robin Ford's Traveling Guitar Dojo. It's great working. It's great working with him for sure. Phrase to gangster rap lyrics. I don't think I could do that. Robin Trower's Phrasing Goes and Raised You. Yes, I love Robin Trower. And if you have my record, I went through, it's much more Trower influence than I am now. Kind of stepped away from playing strats and univibes because I was really, I think I kind of went down that rabbit hole pretty hard, but I love Robin Trower. Absolutely. Bridge of Sighs is a hugely influential record for me, and he's still playing great. See what else we got. 8-bar blues. Okay, I think we don't have much time, but yeah, you know, Key to the Highway. Play over Key to the Highway. That's a good one to check it out. Same thing, anytime, same 3 chords. Just start to apply that to another tune. What exercise do you to improve rhythm? What exercise do you use to improve rhythm? Play, you know, the first thing I would do is to play along with records or CDs, whatever you want to call them, 8-track cassettes, phonographs, you know. Play the rhythm guitar parts. I have, it's like a pip in my courses, but 30 authentic blues grooves. It's totally just learn tunes. Learn as many tunes. That's like kind of like a closing phrase, thought here about the soloing. That's one thing, but learning tunes is huge. I moved to New York after going to music school. Go to these open jams. I didn't know songs. I would just get my butt handed to me, get on stage, and like, oh, let's do, you know, like a rock and roll standard or some blues standard I might not know. And every blues tune is not just good. I mean, yeah, you want to be good at playing, but you've all been to blues jams maybe that it falls into that, and I want to kill myself. So knowing popular blues tunes like, you know, My Babe or, you know, Checking in My Baby, all these classic blues tunes, 30 of them are in my course. Just get a Spotify or buy Little Walter's Greatest Hits and learn all those tunes. It's just tunes. It's like a jazz musician. You just need to know the vocabulary. Same thing with playing blues and rock. So if I go on a rock gig, I mean, will I know Metallica tunes? No. It's not that I don't like Metallica. But it's I know a ton of jammable rock tunes, whether they're R&B tunes or just straight on rock tunes. You know, if anyone wants to jam on that, or Zeppelin or Stones, I know a ton of those tunes, and you really want to get that vocabulary together. So to answer the question, that helped my rhythm guitar playing a lot, because if I've got to play, you know, you're playing a Stones tune poorly at the moment. Need to get that rhythm together, you know. You know, playing a ZZ Top tune, I learned a lot from that. Just learning tunes. Zeppelin. All right, so I think we're cool, right? Any last questions? I really appreciate everybody who's joined me here. If you want to, learn more about me, jeffmcerlain.com. Got a chord tone soloing course coming out any day now at TrueFire. I'm really happy with that one. Ties in exactly with what we're talking about on some blues tunes and some classic things like Bring It On Home to Me, things like that. See the Lights. Now, really popular kind of blues tunes that for me, and all my courses are on TrueFire, are on sale right now. So them while they're hot. My final thoughts once again, learn as many songs and solos and everything as you possibly can. That would be one of the hugest things I think you should do. All right. So thanks, everyone. I hope to see you soon, and take care.